So Peggle 2, very controversial. Now, I will be ripping this game. People hate this game for all kinds of reasons, whether it be the lack of content. Most common complaints are the art style, the game not being on PC, of course, but, you know, that would be for another video where I rip the game to shreds and really complain about it. In this video, I'm going to talk about what the game did do right. So, instead of focusing on all the negative of the game, I'm going to focus on the positives. And the first thing I like to discuss about the characters. So usually in Peggle 1, the characters you pick, my first point is that they matter more than their ability. Now, of course, the ability matters more than anything, but it's nice that the characters have their own unique things. Like, they have their animations, they have more personality, they have unique sounds for hitting pegs, they all have their own theme songs in the trial and the normal stages, and they all have their own fever music. So it feels like there's more to the characters than just their abilities in this game. And me personally, I feel like that's a nice touch. You know, when I'm Norman, I hear like the technology, or if I'm like Jamie and I hear like the electric guitar, you know. And they have their little like voice, they have their little like ability activations. But see, when you pick a character in Peggle 1, it's just kind of, you're really just going for their ability. You're not really thinking of anything else. Of course, like I said, the ability is the end all be all. I mean, that's what really matters. But it's nice that the characters are more different than just, oh, this guy's the super guide, or this guy, you know. It's nice that they're a little different. You know, even when you're playing Peg Party, you will hear the different theme songs. Or if you're playing Duel, then the theme songs will switch back and forth, which I think is pretty cool. So, and of course, they have their own fever music. The only downside is, of course, if you want to hear the OG fever music, then you have to be Bjorn. But besides that, I really love the fact that they all have their own songs, and there's more of them than just, oh, there's their ability. So, Peggle 1, you know, it had hazards as well, but like a lot of them were very annoying. Like the gator pit level where the stuff blocks your ball, or even the dope panic level where you have this giant ball in the middle. Some of them were just not fun. And you also had this level with the stupid straw in the middle. Sometimes they could be interesting, but a lot of times the hazards were in the game specifically to screw you over. It feels like Peggle 2 does a much better job of implementing the bumpers that actually help you, and they can actually help with your ability. So, like if you're Jeff with the boulder, you can actually shoot your boulder off of those and get the bumpers. Or if you're Berg, then you know you can bounce off of those and hit other pegs like this level. You know, I didn't get a good bounce here, but most of the time you're gonna get better bounces than I did. It feels like the bumpers are much better than the old Peggle hazards, like even the teleporters or the blockers on the blockers level for Renfield. It just feels like the bumpers help you much more. It's like, hey, if you know, if you messed up your shot and it got to the wall, you know, the bumpers can help you get back some score. But in Peggle 1, it felt like most of the hazards were there specifically to mess your shot up, where in this game, it feels like they help you more than not. So, you know, if I had a bad shot, or like with my ball landing on the sides, the bumpers will be there to clean it up, which is nice. It's nice to have things in the level that actually increase your score, rather than having to worry about, oh, if I hit this shit, then my ball's probably just gonna drop and it's not gonna do anything. So, yeah. So another thing we have to talk about is the trials, which I believe are the best parts of Peggle 2. It's not even close. Peggle 2's trials are kind of like Peggle 1's challenges. You know, the challenges like hit 55 oranges or score such and such points or, you know, style shots or whatever. So Peggle 2 goes above and beyond in my opinion because it actually forces you to use some of the abilities and it teaches you how to use them. And plus it has all these really fun levels where you can get extra greens, extra purples. So say this level with Norman, I got 5 greens. Who hasn't wanted to go into a Peggle level and have like 4 fireballs or 5 Zen shots or 5 lucky spins? Everyone thinks about that at some point, right? Like, oh, what if I just had a bunch of greens? So Peggle 2 gives you these levels where you can have a shitload of greens, a shitload of purples. So it also shows off the master's abilities, and they're much better than the challenges in my opinion. The challenges were fun, but these do a much better job showing off the abilities, and it kind of feels like a distraction from the main mode because the challenges in Peggle 1 kind of felt like just an extra version of the campaign. I mean, your goal was still the same, clear all the oranges for the most part. Sometimes it'd be score based, but these feel like it's giving you something different. Like, obviously, this isn't meant to be a challenge, this is just meant to be fun. You can come back to this level and use a bunch of boulders, use a bunch of multi-balls, and it's gonna be fun every single time. Like, in Peggle 1, the challenges that you remember in Peggle 1 were like, no one's gonna remember the orange challenges. We all remember the cool challenges, like where you use the magic hat 3 times, or you had the fireball and the flippers. Like, who doesn't love this challenge? Everyone loves this challenge. Who doesn't want to have fireball and flippers? Or like the Electro Bolt challenge, where you have to clear a level with a bunch of Electro Bolts. Peggle 2's trials are more in line with these kind of challenges, and they're much better than the standard clear a bunch of orange pegs. Because you can always go back to them and they'll always be fun. But adding a bunch of orange pegs to a level, it just makes it basically the same. You're kind of just beating the level again. But these challenges actually show you how to use the abilities, like how Yorn's super guys are fucking rainbow and it just shows you the slides. Or it'll show you how Norman's Uber Vault shocks the pegs that are closest, or it'll show you how Jeff's boulder goes, or it'll show you that the deep freeze hits blocks that are next to it, or it'll show you that Luna's nightshade, once you get the fever meter up and you clear the level, you just get a bunch of points from the blues, or it'll show you how to save Wendy's fairy flock for the very end of the level, and just stuff like that. The trials, they're much better than the challenges. You can come back to them and they don't get stale. I feel like the challenges get stale. I've played Peggle Deluxe probably like 15 times 100% the game, multiple versions, and some of the challenges at some points, I mean, they're just asking you to really do the same things over and over. Oh, hey, score a bunch of points, hit pegs, but these feel unique. These feel like they're really showing you how to use the abilities, you know? So, I don't really have much else to say for the trials. They're the best parts of the game, of course, like I said. Even as someone, I don't play Peggle 2 a bunch, but when I do hop on the game just to have fun, I always come back to the trials. So, yeah, there's not much to say. So, my fourth and final things kind of go hand in hand, but I wanted to say that I'm glad that Peggle 2, the fourth thing it did right was not change the gameplay so much. Am I giving it a layup, some brownie points? Kind of, because that's the bare minimum for a sequel, right? To not change the gameplay. But when I look at a game like Peggle Blast that asks you to drop gems in a cup or to hatch eggs, it becomes clear that they just did way too much. The goal of Peggle is to clear oranges and you fever. So I'm glad Peggle 2 doesn't make it any more complicated than that. Almost every single level in the game, you clear the oranges, and that's it. They're not asking you to do some crazy objectives like in Blast, and I'm thankful for that. Because that's all you can really ask for at the end of the day. The gameplay is mostly intact. You know, the physics of the ball are a little out of whack, but you know, we'll talk about that in another video. For the most part, the game is the same. You have greens, you have oranges, you have blue pegs, you have purple pegs. You gotta clear all the oranges. You got the fever meter, you got free balls, 25k, 75k, 125. For the most part, the main things that you expect to be in a Peggle game are all there. And my fifth and final point is that I feel like all the characters are strong, and I feel like it's very important for the multiplayer. I feel like it's much more balanced. In Peggle 1, it felt like certain levels, if you were Yorn or if you were Jimmy or Cat Tut, you were just never going to be able to beat it. Like, it was like the Yin and Yang level in Peggle 2, Peggle 1. No way you were beating that unless you're like Hat or Fireball. Some characters were just way too overpowered. Like, why would you ever use the Pyramid or like Multi-Ball over like Zen Shot or Magic Cat? Like, there was just no reason to. There was just literally no reason to. So I'm glad that in Peggle 2 every character has their uses. I mean, Yorn is a little weak, but for the most part, he's not bad. He's not bad at all. So, the Super Guide is the weakest of the characters, but he still gets a big buff from where he was before. And I'm just glad to know that Multi-Ball gets a huge buff as well. So, yeah, it feels like even the boulder can get you 100k easy, you know what you're doing. Bird's Deep Freeze is really strong. You can really chain together a lot of pegs. Multi-ball, I mean, obviously this is one of those trials where you get a bunch of greens, so of course he's going to be overpowered. But the fact that he gets 3 now and they kind of spread out more makes him more viable. Jimmy and Fairy Flock obviously can be strong. Norman's Uberville is just so overpowered. He's the only character that might kind of break the rules where he is so overpowered. But Luna's Nightshade, obviously no slouch if you fever with it. And it just feels like all the characters are much more balanced than they were before. Now there's way less characters, so they should be more balanced, you know. If you're gonna have way less characters, then the least you can do is make it so that they're more on an even playing field, because you know, only 7 masters, which we'll get into in the next video. But you know, I want to talk good about this game for a little because, you know, this game is kind of a forgotten one. I mean, Peggle 2 is kind of that game that you really just have to sit back and really think about, like, wow, there's a Peggle 2. Because if you're talking Peggle, you're talking OG Peggle, or you're talking Blast because of how bad it is. Peggle 2 is kind of in that weird area where it's not as infamous as Blast, and it's not as good as Peggle 1. So no one talks about it. And when people do talk about it, it's just kind of like, yeah, it's not Peggle 1, and the characters look weird, and it's different, so we all know different is bad. But it's not necessarily the case. The game is good, and there's a lot of good things about it, and there's some things that it does a little better than Peggle 1, but for the most part, it's obviously a downgrade, and it's not as good. And the reason why it's not as good as 1 we'll talk about in the next video, but there are some things that hold this game back from truly being great. Like Peggle 1 is, this game is just fine, it's good. If it wasn't called Peggle, it was called something else, then, you know, it'd be fine, but, you know. But I want to say some good things about this game before I tear it to shreds in the next video. So, that could be 2 weeks from whenever this uploaded, it could be a week, could be a month. I don't know. I try to make it longer than a month, but we'll see.